So let's begin. Welcome to the March 4th, 2024 Community Preservation Commission meeting. Thank you for joining us in our new location, or temporary location. I'll call the meeting to order, and our first order of business is the review and approving of the minutes from February. Did everyone have an opportunity to review the minutes? Are there any corrections, additions? Then is there a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor of approving the February minutes, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Minutes are approved. Next is review and sign bills. Louise, thank you for joining us in Chris's place. Do we have any bills? Okay, moving on. To our project eligibility requests. As I say every time, we're determining whether or not the project as presented is eligible to be considered for CPA funding. The first one on the agenda is the First Congregational Church. I think it's important before we determine eligibility, we had waited because we were awaiting an opinion from town council on whether or not we could even consider one, since it's from the First Congregational Church. So I have the attorney's opinion in front of me, and I know Jason has some other information, but ultimately, there is a three-factor test that if we are to apply this to anything we consider, this would guide us whether or not we could. So let's see, factor one would be purpose. The factor requires the CPC to consider whether the grant is truly for the purpose of historic preservation, or is there some hidden purpose to aid the church? Would the grant, for instance, serve to maintain or aid the church in its religious mission, rather than simply serve historic preservation? The next factor, according to town council, is substantial aid. The second factor to be considered is whether the effect of the grant is to substantially aid the church. The court noted our precedents make clear that a grant of public funds does not violate the anti-aid amendment if the assistance it provides to a private institution is merely minimal or remote. The aid must provide substantial assistance to the church to risk violation of the anti-aid amendment. In evaluating this factor, we look to both the amount of the aid provided and, quote, the degree to which it assists the church in carrying out its essential function. And the third factor, per town council, is risks. The third and last factor that must be considered is whether the grant avoids the risks that prompted the passage of the anti-aid amendment. There are three risks to be assessed under this factor. The first risk is whether liberty of conscience would be infringed whenever a citizen is taxed to support the religious institutions of others. The second risk is whether the public funding would result in improper government entanglement with religion, thereby undermining the independence and dignity of churches. And the third risk concerns public support of religious institutions, which would threaten civic harmony by making the divisive question of religion a political one. According to town council, if we are able to consider these three factors in regards to anything coming from the First Congregational Church, then we would be permitted to consider that application for funding. Jason, you had additional information or guidelines from which department?
Department of Revenue. But that also is assuming that the subject of the project being proposed is the one that's in our drive, which is the one we reviewed last time, and that is for a request for funds to paint a certain side of the church, another phase of it, painting and maintenance of that, painting and washing of that space, power washing, yes.
I'd like to just add the power washing is also part of the surface prep painting.
Yes. So in that very specific, if this is the project we're talking about, right? And that's a continuation from last month, I should say. I do want to read from the Department of Revenue they've released a informational guidance release. It's version number 19-14, dated December 2019. And this is a document that explicitly gives guidance to CPCs and financial departments, et cetera, to look at what it's their opinion about the Community Preservation Fund and how money should be spent. It is a 75-page document that really goes into the nitty-gritty about finance with regard to Community Preservation Act. In particular, there is a section here that talks about, and this is on page 56. If you're in the drive, I can tell you where to go. If you're not in the drive, then I'll just read out loud what it is. Okay. Page 56 is a continuation of section C, historic resources. Specifically, there's a bullet point for rehabilitation, and they call out a number of scenarios. And this project falls under one of those scenarios where they give guidance. So I'll read this section. Rehabilitation, specifically painting that is an integral part of a larger eligible rehabilitation or restoration project, i.e. painting after extraordinary repairs or restoration of walls, woodwork, trim, siding, etc., is allowable. However, periodic painting or repainting of a historic building on a recurring basis would be in nature of maintenance and not be eligible for CPA funding. Then they give another example under restoration, in which case these two are tied together in a similar fashion for restoration. Painting to restore a historic building to its original historic color is allowable. For example, a historic building originally painted yellow was painted purple in the 70s. In this case, restoring the building to its historic yellow color is not periodic or recurring painting and is not maintenance. However, repainting said building yellow in a few years after its original painting would be maintenance and is not allowable. I think given the way it was written in the proposal, it's not from a perspective of restoring it back to a historic nature. And there's no call out here of any significant restoration of walls, woodwork, trim, or siding to make it as part of an allowable extraordinary restoration or rehabilitation. So unless there's any other evidence to suggest otherwise, I don't think we have any way to deviate from the guidance that the Department of Revenue has given us, whether this is, to say anything other than this is maintenance, which is not allowable. So I'm glad that there was a lot of work that was flushed on a last conversation to understand whether we can even entertain any projects from the First Congregational Church. But now that we've gotten past that guidance and said go forward, this specific project as is presented, I don't think it's eligible given the Department of Revenue's statement on this. And that's not, I think we should take that pretty verbatim unless there's other evidence that suggests otherwise from the applicant.
Your thoughts, Mother?
Well, can I add just something to that? Not necessarily in opposition, but just a different avenue to look at. If any work on historic properties has to follow the guidelines from the Secretary of Interior's standards, I printed out for you guys that's a 135-page document, so I only printed the parts that were pertinent, but there's all kinds of stuff. But under definitions, they define 4 different categories, one of them being preservation, and that's on the first page at the bottom. I kind of highlighted some of them for you. And the first 2 sentences say, preservation means the act or process of applying measures necessary to sustain the existing form, integrity, and materials of an historic property. Work, including preliminary measures to protect and stabilize the property, generally focuses upon the ongoing maintenance and repair of historic materials and features rather than extensive replacement and new construction. So if they're to follow the guidelines of the Secretary of Interior standards, they're basically saying that what the painting would be to sustain the integrity of the building. So that qualify as being eligible?
Yeah.
Yeah, good. Definitely.
That's what we're figuring out.
Yeah, right.
So So the way I see it is that the
Does it speak to, I'm sorry,
Yeah, go ahead.
does that speak at all to what's deemed historic? 'Cause I believe from our last conversation, some parts of the church property are absolutely without a doubt considered historic.
Once it's deemed historic, it's the entire building.
It's the
that's
entire
his-
building, even
right.
if part of it was
doesn't matter if
earlier.
there's-
Okay.
Parts of it, it's the entire, the entirety that is historic. It's not like it was historic in one section when it's given the historic designation, it's the entire building.
Okay. Okay. So the way I see it is, my perspective is the guidance, the Secretary of Interior's standards for treatment of historic properties is a broad umbrella. How do you treat the historic property? But I don't see them saying, well, this only applies for Community Preservation Act, Massachusetts 44B,
Right.
MGL 44B. So I think that this is treatment of the building regardless of how funds are received. If we were to use CPA monies, we have to follow Chapter 44B.
Okay,
And Chapter 44B has an extended explanation through the Department of Revenue, through their guidance release. So I think that the Secretary of Interior, the definition will help guide the church in their project, however it's funded. But for us to use to recommend CPA monies be expended on this project, I don't see a clear path for that.
okay. So on our sheet that we go by, under
Yes.
preservation, it says to protect personal or real property from injury, harm, or destruction. And that's a broad term as well, okay? But if not putting a coat of paint on the church is going to create situations that we have elsewhere in town where things rot and deteriorate, then that's we're not preserving that historic resource. So do we, it's all interpretation, I guess, and I don't know. I would say that I would vote for eligibility myself. So that's one vote for eligibility.
Martha?
I have a question. I did read all the documentation, and I loved learning about the church. I cannot remember the last time that section was painted, how long it had been.
It's lead paint,
So at least the 70s.
50s.
50, is this the original paint?
I don't know.
It's been, I don't know if it's original,
No.
but it's been a long time.
Okay.
And I probably could get a date if you needed one, because my husband is no longer, but he was on buildings and grounds, and he had something to do with something around that, the outside of the building, and so I could find out, but you're saying the upstairs, the upper part is gonna be
The entire wing from the cemetery to the parlor is 1956. But can I maybe back up a little? And so we've passed the deadline for spring town meeting, May town meeting. No, we haven't. Okay.
Tonight, we'll be making some decisions of what will go to the Maytown meeting.
Okay, all right. So does that answer your question?
It did, and the reason that I asked it is I'm trying to clarify in my mind, I think there's a difference between maintenance, which is a coat of paint every 5 years or so, and what's the other category? It's not rehabilitation, is it restoration?
Restoration.
Restoration and preservation. And if it hasn't had a coat of paint in 20, 30 years, to me, that's not maintenance. That's past what I would consider maintenance, so I would be prone to consider this restoration.
I think the other thing we have to look at is the difference between a historic building being a church and a church that is not a historic building. You have to kind of separate the two. If we were looking at a church down the street that has no historic significance, then maybe it doesn't pass the Lipness test. But because this is a historic building, I think you have to go beyond all the little things and consider, well, this is a historic building, so it needs preservation, and it fits to the test to me. So I would think differently if it was just a church someplace else, but because it's historic, I feel as though it needs to be.
It seems by the decision of town council that passes the three factors. It
Right.
would seem that we absolutely can, for First Congregational Church, because of the historic significance this particular building has in our community and the many uses that are community-oriented and not faith-based, we can consider an application from you and for this building. The question I think we've gotten down to is this project the project that's eligible? Because certainly the applicant is eligible, but is the project? How about this end of the table? Any thoughts or questions?
I tend to think that this is not a good project for CPC, and I would love to support the church in some other aspect of its rehabilitation or restoration or preservation, but I don't know if this is the one, just on the basis of your arguments.
I guess I feel it's more towards maintenance than preservation or restoration, so.
So rather than,
So,
go ahead.
we have discussed this, and I've discussed a lot of things with Louise to kind of help me understand some of this, because this is a lot of paper. And I'm not a lawyer, so there's a lot there to understand. If we are not considered, if this project is not considered eligible, am I correct in saying that other projects would be considered because we are a historical preservation building?
I would think so, yes.
Okay, so my question is, if this is not voted in favor of doing this, moving it forward to the town meeting, should we put together another proposal for another project on eligibility? Or can we come to you with a list of things that we need to do to keep the building, what's the word, kicking?
Yeah. We've got a project, I've got a quote, we're not ready to roll right now, but, same side of the building, because the lawyer does address the side, the side of the building, it's not attached to the sanctuary, there's no icons, And, it does involve tearing out, rotted, vertical wooden siding on the gable triangles and replacing with, a composite. Something we did on the north end of the church with the downtown, I forget the term, but it was a grant from the town. So we have projects like that.
I think it was the town center, I don't know what it was.
Yeah, it
called,
was
but it was-
facade improvement, something like that.
So we did one, the building has four sides, so we did one side with the town funding, and then I received another grant for the other side, the back side. Mainly, I do as many grant writings as I can for the church, mainly because, as you all know, churches aren't overloaded with money, and we do a lot of community outreach, with our funds. So we don't have this big bucket of money to do all the things that need to be done to keep the building looking good and secure. I mean, we have projects that we need to do with flooring inside where the Boy Scouts meet. And we have lots of Boy Scouts that meet there, now Girl Scouts, and they meet
We would love to work with you. If this project isn't the one that is deemed eligible, we'd love to work with you on finding one that is. Because I think it is the opinion of this body that certainly as an applicant, you are eligible per the advice of town council. But it's the project that it's, ironically, two sides of the table, that it seems we have to vote one way or another. But it's the project that seems to be not sitting right with everyone. But it seems that last time we spoke, you had quite a laundry list of very worthy projects. It would seem that if this isn't the one, there's got to be one that would fit.
So should we, well,
Well,
why don't you vote
I
first?
think we
and
have to
then I can
vote
ask
on this right now, but any applicant going forward, certainly contacting the planning office and speaking with any of us, we're all more than happy to help you figure out and sort through. It is a lot of paper, it's a lot of information.
Well, I did have a conversation with someone, and I would like to know, is it best to come in the next time with a list of like 2 or 3 things that we are considering, and then have your feedback on that? I'm saying versus
Yeah.
come
This is a
in with
workshop.
one.
But, yeah, we can do that. We annually have a workshop, and that is a great time to talk through and work on that. I'm sorry, I don't have the date for that yet. That's on our to-do list. But because at this time, what we are trying to stick to doing is determining eligible or not. But then we could work with you offline and at a workshop to figure out what might be the right one, and you had something else to say.
Yes. So I hear my other colleagues, and I would like to ask, what in the project proposal, as it's stated, is there extraordinary repairs or restoration of walls, woodwork, trim, or siding? Extraordinary. And I think the key word is extraordinary, because that's been a recurring theme amongst the rehabilitation restoration text within the IGR and then our 101 cheat sheet. So if I can get on board on that, if there's extraordinary work.
What
If
is an
it's-
example of something that's
Replacing siding. Rotted wood.
Wood siding, like
Rotted
is the
wood. We have
entire,
rotted
is the-
column, we have rotted wood, we have rotted trim.
this particular project, I'm saying this, not, the columns aren't in this project, right? Is there any text to lead us to that? Like, I see painting is the main,
It is,
yes,
this project is.
okay.
Is there a
So to my
definition of
so to my
extraordinary?
colleagues, yes,
Next
is
one
there,
will be.
do you see a reason to say that, yes, this is extraordinary?
I have to know what you're determining extraordinary is. To me, extraordinary is not seeing it preserved. So,
Okay, extraordinary
is there a definition?
repairs or restoration of walls, woodwork, trim, or siding, et cetera. But then excluding painting from that conversation, from that list. Like, I would just say, look, this is a historic building in our community. I am proud that this building still exists in our community. I would love to see that project, a project like this, move forward in some fashion, funded in allowable ways. I just don't see, as a CPC member, an avenue which says this is eligible under 44B. So that's, just to be clear, like, it's not, I'm not personally saying no. I can't say yes, because these are the rules in which we have to follow. And unless there's something else that jumps out that I'm not seeing, I have no path forward for me, as I read it.
Well, you're entitled to that opinion, right?
So, we need to vote one way or the other. How would we like to propose this motion? Is there a motion that someone would like to propose?
And give it to Gail.
All right, I move that we approve eligibility for the Congregational Church. How is it listed?
It's listed as a painting project.
just says painting project on it.
So your move
Yeah,
that we
I
approve.
move to
Deem
to
this
approve
eligible.
eligibility for the
As
conver-
proposed,
as-
eligible. Is there a second?
Second.
Those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed?
Aye.
Nay.
No.
Any abstentions?
Yes.
So it does not pass. This project is not deemed eligible, but I think you could see there's a lot of enthusiasm for the other projects on your list. So we will be happy to work with you and figure out how to make that possible going forward.
A couple questions?
Yes.
Does this committee meet during the summer?
Yes, we
Yes.
meet year-round.
Because you're listed for June, but nothing for July.
The new
or
fiscal
August.
year, we don't have the meetings listed yet,
Okay.
but we will.
And timeline, when's our deadline for picking the
There-
project we want? And
I believe we're moving towards 2 annual meetings a year. The special town meeting will become a regular thing in October. So certainly if we'll be looking at and evaluating eligibility and projects for October as well. At a minimum, 90 days before that town meeting, which date we don't know. That generally gives us enough time to ask questions, but reach out right away and look at your list of projects and see what we can find out that we might be able to help, because it is an important one.
basically the 1st of August
Yep.
is what you have on the website for, I think, last year.
And we had deadlines before, but we're trying to be more flexible,
Right, right.
which is a good and bad
So we
thing.
need a target, you know.
Yep.
So, you'll get in touch with us, or will it be posted when you're having that meeting when you?
Yes, we can let you know when that is. It will be posted because it'll be a public meeting, but we also can let you know as well. And if you have questions, the email that you had, the general email for planning, between Louise and Chris, they'll get your question to the right person, and we'll get you some answers as quick as we can.
The website will show when the workshop is.
Yes.
Shop is scheduled.
And we will put it out via social media. It will be in the newsletters and such that the town puts out as soon as we have that date.
So it would be best to wait till the workshop to have those discussions.
You can start the conversation before. Anytime, we'll see what we can do.
Through planning,
Yep, through the planning.
yeah.
Louise, what's that email, planning@shrewsbury.ma.gov?
You got it.
There we go. We'll get it moving. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yep.
Yeah.
And thank you for all the work you put into this and helping us understand how to move forward. Because as I said, I'm out there looking to see how we can receive monies to preserve that wonderful over 300-year-old building. We're older than town.
No doubt, it's historic. All right, next, under project eligibility requests is for the Prospect Park pergola project. In the packet that was submitted, that's in the drive, there is a letter from Lamro Pagano that discusses the, I'm told that that's essentially the synopsis of the assessment that was done. And the assessment had said that, that the pergola is, would you like to tell? From what I read was that the pergola cannot be saved, but it can, but you'd like to build a replica, which is what,
Recommend building a replica.
okay.
There's too much damage in most of the structure, the cast stone cornices crumbling. Their point was, there's so much damage, it's in such bad shape that to even try to build upon what's there just wouldn't be a sound structure. It wouldn't be sound practice. And their recommendations were,
on the existing foundation, though.
Pardon me?
The existing foundation is good. Everything on top of it.
Discuss, folks.
I think I'll let Jason go first.
You sure?
Yeah, go ahead. I like
Yeah,
to
I can
hear
be
what
happy.
you have to say.
That's fine.
I'm sorry. Why do I have to be the bad guy?
That's okay. Well, no, I have another angle,
Okay.
so go ahead.
All right, may I? Okay, all right. Okay, so again, I'm gonna cite a document that I didn't create, okay? This is the
This is
Department.
okay, this is
This is
good.
Department of Revenue, okay, Department of Revenue, and, because, you know, the first thing, I mean, I've heard about this before, but I knew that I'm like, all right, I need to have something that backs this up. So here we go, page 57. Again, section C, rehabilitation, I'm sorry, historic resources is a section. And that is the last bullet point before D, community housing. And it reads, funding for the acquisition, preservation, rehabilitation, or restoration of replicas of historic resources is not allowable because replicas, in quote, are not within the CPA definition of historic resource. So what is a historic resource? Those would be buildings, structures, vessels, real property, document, or artifact listed on the State Register of Historic Places or determined by a local historic preservation commission to be significant in the history, archaeology, architecture, or culture of the city or town. The structure itself that exists is the historic artifact.
Yes.
If you're tearing it down,
Yes.
you no longer have historic artifact.
Yes, yes, that is true. And we were in a quandary about this too when we were given their recommendation. And would it behoove us then to change the category to open space or recreation and resubmit? Because it's part of the park where there's recreation and open space, and to me, when we started this 2 years ago, and I came to the first workshop, I listed it in all three of those categories. I didn't know which one it fit best, and somehow everyone just steered historical. I said, well, actually, it could be in all three. So, could we?
So the last town meeting, as you know, that we're gonna build a cemetery there. At the last town meeting, the rest of the property was voted in as recreation land to stay that way. So I think that makes the case for changing the category if you know, rebuilding on that foundation doesn't cover under the historical section, then I think we have a case on the recreation side.
Yeah, okay, so let's look at that. All right, so what is recreation land? Recreation land is for the active or passive recreational use, including but not limited to the use of land for community gardens, trails, non-commercial youth and adult sports, and the use of land is a park, playground, or athletic field. And then it's just specific calls out, does not include horse or dog racing or use of land for a stadium, gymnasium, or similar structure. So when we look at the intent of CPA, when it comes to the recreation land, it's about open space, it's about using that space, both passive and active avenues of that. I hear where you're going with that, and I know there's gonna be another project we could talk about saying structures along a trail. I don't know, it feels more like a stretch to say let's use CPA monies to build a structure. You know? Why do I have to be the bad guy?
But the structure
You know?
is.
But I'm just saying, like, I look at it as saying, okay, it is historic, it's important in our community. Shrewsbury Prospect Park has put a lot of effort into keeping this remaining structure alive for our community. No doubt about that. Personally, I'm looking at this saying, wow, it's great that it's lasted this long as it has, and it hasn't fallen down. But from, like, can it be funded by CPA? That's the hat I have to wear. And so when I look at that, to me, I hear you saying that's like an angle, right, recreation land. It doesn't feel right to me. It doesn't feel like it's really the intent. of CPA was to say, let's get an expensive structure. Let's say, even if it was just a structure, is it even a priority in that regard, right? For recreation, right? When we say $1 million for a structure for recreation versus we could put $1 million to buying land to have more recreation. So I don't know, that's me.
Yeah, it's verging on an art installation, which we don't do, you know? It's something to look at. It's not gonna be terrifically functional as a,
Trail.
you know, as a recreational building. It's a good shot, but I would say, even if we did approve this, it would be at the bottom of my list.
And what we have to determine is as submitted, which is submitted as historic preservation. That's what we can say yes or no about right now. That's not to say if we say no, you can't repackage it, reimagine it, and come back to us with a recreation project. But I think we have to make our determination on what has been submitted, which is a restoration and rehabilitation of a historic asset, which, correct, building a replica does not fit that.
Let me pose a question to Jason, because Jason, you have a firm knowledge of all this, so we need your input. If there was enough of the structure, or parts of the structure that were able to be restored or rehabbed, could there be a joint project between historic restoration and recreation? Because it is going to be used as a function space, not just a structure in the garden. You know, I think the plan was to use it for events and weddings and things like that. So there are some parts of that structure elsewhere in town that are in good condition. If those could be secured and brought to the site, and even if you created a new pergola of some sort, not necessarily replicating the old one, but create a new using those historic pieces, could that be done by obtaining the other historic pieces and creating something with CPA money?
No, because that's creating history, you can't.
But it's acquiring, we can acquire historic resources. So you're just
If the
bringing them back to where they originally were. The columns were originally at the pergola, and they're not there anymore, but they're in town. So why couldn't they be relocated and?
Do you have them in your basement? Is that what's going on?
I'm not going to disclose the location. I don't know. I know this was a hard one because this I went through the same thing. It's like, you know, taking it down, now you're reconstructing it, and even though the Secretary of Interior Standards has a category for reconstruction, we don't have it in CPA, and maybe that's something CPA should look into, you know, is adding that to the rehabilitation, restoration, and reconstruction, because that happens a lot, and there's very firm guidelines, you know, on how to do it, but I'm really torn on this one, because I hate to see that not be able to be done.
I do wonder, I like your idea about using some of the unusable pieces as an art installation, and I wonder if that's something the Cultural Council might be. I personally like the idea of using some of the unusable pieces as some sort of art installation at some point. That might
part
be
of this
something.
bid was the very careful dismantling of it and storage till we can come up with ideas that we can reimagine the uses of the pieces. And we were looking at installations throughout the park. So that is a part of this too, was that.
In that, if it's art, you might look at the Mass Cultural Councils and the Town Cultural Council they support art projects. Not everyone, and they have their own criteria, but that might be a place to look for parts of it.
It will help us rebuild this? No, I don't think so.
not all of it.
I mean, ideally, we're looking at rebuilding a historical structure that sits in a historical garden. And it actually, I mean, we foresee it being used recreationally with events that go on, races, walks. I mean, it's just the place where everyone would gather. We would probably organize and have things start and finish and culminate in that structure. Bottom line, I guess we have to understand where we are at the beginning of the CPA funding and all kind of learning the gray areas and how we're navigating around this and learning what the boundaries are and what we can. I thought that we pretty much checked the boxes in many different areas.
You know, I really would like to see a way forward, for sure. You know, Prospect Park was definitely one of the projects that we listed as when we campaigned on it, right? Campaign on why adopt CPA, right? And I think it would be a shame not to see it there. But I think we have a duty to see what is eligible, what is allowable. And I think in just pondering I know, if you allow me, please, I know that the project as it proposes is for historic preservation. And I think it's clear that it's knowledgeable from that perspective. The recreation side of it is intriguing. Thank you for bringing it up, because I'm thinking, all right, well, you could have, what's it called? Like the pergolas, right? You know, that are there to, you know, where people can have refuge after, let's say, a baseball game, right? This is attached to soccer fields or baseball fields, benches, covered space where you can, you know, dugouts, et cetera. Correcting any issues with bandstands, et cetera, if it's historic, et cetera, et cetera. So it could fall along that. But then we start getting into the realm of how much money do you want to spend for that? And then it becomes a prioritization perspective, so I don't know.
I'll say one more thing, because this is good, this is interesting. So if we saw this structure being utilized as a concert venue, where that's recreation, it would, you know, house a band, then could we put another package together with a pergola that won't be a historical replica? We might be able to do something on a smaller budget with that may be handsome, but not exactly a historic replica. Might a structure that is used for recreational gatherings, events, would that fit under CPA funding?
Could.
A little more gray, yeah, but
So not quite as gray. I guess it is a little more gray. You know, a replica, no, we cannot by law use CPA funds for a replica. But creating an activity space in the name of recreation is something that we could consider.
I'm recommending that we have that conversation
Yeah.
through planning and just seeing
Ultimately, I think
opportunities.
that for tonight's purposes, we have to make a determination on the application that is before us in the format that it is in front of us. And just like we told our neighbors from the First Congregational Church, keep talking to us, because just like the church, Prospect Park is a really special part of the community. And we want to find a way that we can preserve it, utilize it, have more people use it and enjoy it. As written right now, I think will be the opinion of this board that it's not this way, but planning at shrewsbury.ma.gov, can have a conversation and see what we can reimagine. I was so disappointed when I did hear that it couldn't be saved. That would have been easier.
We were too, we were, yeah, very disappointed, very.
Right, but it has to come down one way or another, so I guess that's up to us to figure out how it's gonna come down in a timely manner. So,
I guess that's one of the nice things about not a snowy winter, But those of you that know me know I'm not happy that it's not a snowy winter. But that's me personally. So is there a motion regarding this application?
I can make a motion that the project as discussed is not eligible.
Is there a second?
Second.
All that are in favor that this project as presented is not eligible, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? So, again, it's not eligible, but let's keep talking. And thank you for all that you're doing for the park. We do truly appreciate it.
May I make just a quick
Yes.
personal comment? Being on the Historical Commission and being interested in preserving history in town and everywhere else, I think this is a really good example of how, when there is not a plan put in place to maintain and protect these historic resources, this is where they end up, in a heap. And that's really a shame, because it happens with buildings, it happens with structures, so it's a mindset, I guess, for the town that has to decide, do we want to preserve these resources, or do we want to see them go by the wayside? There's a good example of what happens when they're not maintained, you know, it's just left for ruin, because it could have been saved at one point. So it's really sad to see it go. But maybe there's maybe there's something we can do to resurrect it.
We'll find something.
Yeah.
There is a website out there, Community Preservation Coalition, that lists a lot of projects that have been approved. So you might want to look at that to kind of go forward. And I see a Pierce Beach bandstand that might fit, I don't know.
Thank you.
Sure.
So next on our agenda are those projects that we have deemed eligible. Yes.
Point of order, not jumping out of line.
Yes.
I'm trying to understand, and if it's not a 2-minute, if it's not a 1-minute explanation, I can pass. Project eligibility versus public hearing. Are those in public hearings, and again, I'm happy to wait on Elizabeth Street, is that not eligible, or is that a next step, or are we missing a window, or what's the difference maybe?
The first step is determining whether or not a project is eligible. Previously, there were two distinct deadlines, but now some applicants are choosing to submit both forms at once.
And that's what we're doing.
Yes.
Thank you, 1 minute, sorry.
If once the
I just
project
wasn't
is
clear. I
deemed-
didn't know if I was in the wrong slot or
No,
something.
you're in the right spot.
Sorry about that.
And we've continued to arrange our agenda that first we determine the eligibility, because if it's not eligible,
I
we're
got
not
it.
going to talk about funding.
Thank you very much, sorry for the interruption.
So we're moving on to that part of those applications that have been deemed eligible to now make a determination of if we will recommend them to town meeting for funding. And the first on that, and we invite you to speak to your project if you'd like to, is the Library Story Walk.
Thank you. Thank you for having me here today. So the library and the Parks and Rec Department launched the Story Walk project in 2020, June 2020, at Lake Street Park. And we know that it's been enjoyed by a lot of residents in town. And it's, promotes literacy, encourages people to be outside and enjoy the open nature. So it combines a lot of good things. And one of the goals of the recreational open space, as defined by the CPC, is to preserve, improve, and develop safe recreational opportunities and improve access and connectivity to existing and future sites. And I think this project fits that definition. So what we are requesting is that the Story Walk right now has wooden stakes and then laminated sheets of, laminated pages of a picture book. We want it to be a more durable structure, and I'd shared the quote from the vendor that does this kind of Story Walk projects in many libraries. It has it's aluminum posts and a plexiglass covered surface and it's a slanting surface where you can display the pages, it looks more attractive and it would be more durable. I did visit the Southborough Public Library that has one of these installed. They have it right behind their library, and theirs is not a paved area, it's dirt, kind of, it's a rough terrain, but they have installed these and they said that it's very easy to maintain. They've not had to do anything in the past. They installed it in 21, so it's 3 years. And all that they do, the librarians, they showed us how they do it. Open it up, put the new pages, and then just close it again. And it's, the maintenance is easy. So that's what we are proposing, and the Parks Department has been wonderful collaborating with us in the last 4 years, 3.5 years, and they support this project.
Are there questions, comments from the committee?
Jason?
I do, yeah. Don't worry, we already determined eligibility, so I'm not gonna say. But I do have a question about just the material, since you've seen them installed.
Yeah.
Are they sized so that for persons in wheelchairs could see them? Just
Oh,
make sure.
yes.
Yes?
Yes.
Okay. So they're lower
Except for
enough.
children,
Yes,
after
like
all.
that.
Well, I mean, yeah, but
Yeah.
adults make them, right? So
Yeah.
adult brains make them for, just wanted to make sure that,
Sure.
it's not gonna be a concern in that regard.
Yeah, it would be slightly higher than what we have currently,
Okay,
but it would definitely be accessible and readable by a person on a wheelchair.
okay. And I'm glad that, the application called out the maintenance will be, it's gonna be handled amongst the two parties. And is it secured? Meaning, like, is it locked?
It is, I mean, each one has to be, there are screws that you have to take out to open the,
Okay, so it's not
yeah,
easily accessed?
it's not, yeah, less chances of vandalism and stuff
Okay.
like that.
All right, sounds good. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Would someone, I did bring a suggested wording of a motion. If we were to make motions that would actually go to the warrant, because the projects we do determine we'd like to recommend to town
have a
meeting.
text. This is
we need to
wonderful.
Give them their warrant
Thank you.
information, so.
Thank you.
There's a fill-in-the-blank motion, if anyone would like to make one. Mad Libs, but slightly more serious.
I'll try.
Go for it.
I move to see if the town will vote to appropriate a
Speak to it.
last year, we were approved for an amount of money to put the parking lot in. The goal was to do it as an in-house project with the DPW, and due to some unforeseen circumstances, we are not going to be able to do it in-house, so we'll be going out to bid for it. So we have the original amount of money, which we haven't spent any of yet. We have a commitment from Stormwater to pay for the stormwater part of the parking lot. And I was looking for the extra funds, because we are going out to bid with it within the next couple of weeks. So we will be starting the project. We just may not be finishing it if we don't get the extra funding. We're at the mercy of the bidding system, and we have an estimate as close as possible through our engineering department, and that's why we need the extra funds.
And is this project necessary to be completed before the next project we're considering could be done?
It's at the
It's
same
concurrent.
time. It can be done at the same time.
It would be best.
The
if it was
next-
done concurrently.
The next project will be attached to this. So park, and then you go on the trail, the proposed trail.
Any questions, comments, thoughts? Go right ahead.
So I'm looking for clarity on the funding needed. So I heard last year's appropriation was not used.
Right. It was 142,000.
So this request right now is, that we're looking at, it says 300,000, of which 110 are from stormwater.
Right.
So that's what do we get? 190. So you're looking for 190,
I'm looking for 100.
we're looking for 100.
100,000.
So that's 100 on top of the original?
Yes.
The original was how much?
142.
142.
All right, so 242. You need total 242.
So
Plus the stormwater.
the stormwater. So our stormwater estimate is about 110 on that project. Of course, all these prices are elevated because of prevailing wage and now that we're going out to bid. So that's why the increase. There's probably a little safety net built into there, not knowing the market right now for bidding, but again, our engineers gave us their best estimate on the whole project.
So you are saying that this budget does include some assumption of contingencies, that it's unlikely you would need more than 100,000, but you might not spend all of it as well.
That's my hope.
Anyone?
I'll
No?
continue.
Yeah, sure.
I'll continue unless somebody else has.
No, I have nothing to add to that.
No, nothing to add.
Right ahead.
Does this project still make financial sense if it wasn't about CPA monies? Would this be would this be the total price tag? I just want to make sure that this makes sense. Like I'm not a building engineer, don't work with folks in this space, right? Does it still make economic sense for how many parking spots? I think it's 9 or 11?
10.
Okay.
With some ADA parking.
Handicap parking, and then it allows us to open up to an ADA path is next on the agenda.
I would comment that it's, not, if you look at what it costs to repave the basketball courts, it's just a different kind of recreation, so.
I think it gives greater accessibility to that whole area,
Yeah.
right? It makes it more open to the public,
And
right?
in addition to
Usable.
that, we also have public support. We've asked for comment from the town, and we've received very positive support for, especially the second project for the ADA Blackwell walkway. And I don't
Just for the record, what other facilities are in that area?
And what do you mean?
Well, like other parks or places to recreate?
There
The
aren't,
place-
there aren't any.
I didn't think so, that's
Closest
why I wanted
one
to,
would be Lake Street Park. which
right.
is-
So that end of town does need that type of recreation.
Right.
I have no problems with it.
Are there any other questions or comments? Or are you ready to vote on this one?
Actually, I'm sorry, there is yes.
No,
So,
keep going.
just technically, even if you start using the funds that you've already been appropriated, if town meeting doesn't approve it, that's the risk, that's a real risk, right? I mean,
It
what
is.
can you,
It is, and unless bids come in really low.
fit within the existing
But we,
appropriation?
yeah, at that point, I mean, we might end up with more of a gravel lot with drainage than the actual paved lot with drainage, so.
Okay, I mean, it certainly, it behoove us to not, I mean, not that it's out of control, I'm saying, but I'm just, we can say yes tonight, but if town meeting says no, it would have to be a change project, yeah.
I think we're all suffering from sticker shock on just about everything in our lives. And this is just another example of that. It's kind of scary, but, you know, I don't know what to say about it. If that's what it is, that's what it is.
I think you make a good point that that is the only recreation area on that side of town. I mean, we're, what, 40 square miles, this town? We're a good-sized town, but to not have anything there, that's a good point to make. So what do we think? Is there a motion to be made? Anyone?
Would you like to do it, Melanie? Or would you like me
Sure.
to do it?
Let's see, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but,
It's 100,000.
okay, 100,000? Okay, I vote to see if the town will vote to appropriate a sum of money in the amount of $100,000 from the Community Preservation Outdoor Recreation Fund for the purpose of building a parking lot in Camp Wanigan, with said funds to be under the control of Parks Department?
Yep.
To be expended by June 30th, 2026, unless the CPC by majority vote extends the deadline or take any other action in relation to thereto.
Is there a second?
Second?
Those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Any abstentions? Well, we will recommend this funding to town meeting.
When is town meeting?
May 20th.
21st or something, 20th, I think.
So the second, pardon?
No, nothing. Town meeting.
Oh, yes, May 20th is town meeting. So the next Camp Wanigan Wheelchair Access Trail project. Is there anything else you'd like to tell us about it?
Melanie, do you have copies of the letters of support?
I'm sorry?
Do you have copies of letters of support? I didn't think of.
I did not bring the letters of support. I have the text of the application form, if you would like to look at that, or if anybody else wants to look at it. Let me just go over the numbers, okay? Okay, so,
I do have the numbers here.
okay, well, do you want to carry on then?
That's fine. The Trails Committee has applied to create a wheelchair accessible trail off this new parking lot. We've applied for a Mass Trails grant in the amount of $16,628, which represents their maximum, which is 80% of the proposed project cost. Total project cost is $20,785, and we are asking CPC for the remaining 20%, which is $4,157. And itemization of the project budget here. We asked for and received letters of support from 18 community members who disabled or old, or elderly or young, this will open up a new avenue for them within the town to be able to participate in nature. That's our reason for applying for this.
If I may add a little comment to that, my understanding is that the town would like to see more of this sort of thing go on and would like to be in the forefront of this. There's very little even statewide, as regards miles of wheelchair accessible trails. So we'd be being a good example, we'd be serving a lot of people, and, it's not just for wheelchair users, it's for anybody who can get up there on any, on their feet or whatever. So we think it'll be worth doing, and we're not asking for a lot of money from the town on this one.
Yeah, I noticed in your application you spoke about baby strollers, and I blinked, so my children are no longer in strollers, but I recall when they were very small, trying to think where I could take them, where we could go for a walk, and I live in the hilly part of town, so that was, that was a struggle anyway. But it would be open to, make that area open to many more people in a place where there isn't anything. Oh. What else do we need to know, committee? Are there more questions or comments on this? When might you hear if you receive state funding?
We don't know. At the very latest, at the end of August.
So there is a chance.
What we do is to do this path concurrently with the parking lot, because the thought is you don't want heavy equipment going over your brand new parking lot to
Correct.
build this trail, so we're hoping to be able to do it concurrently.
That would be terrific.
Yeah.
Any other thoughts?
All set?
Would we like to make a motion regarding this project?
I have a,
Yes.
ask a question. You're only asking for $4,157 for this, okay.
Yes.
So
That's 20% of the cost, because
But there,
Mass Trails comes through with their 80%, which I would love to see happen, though there are no guarantees. That would be enough. We need to do the job.
Although the project is exactly the kind of project they like to support.
and in the event that they don't support it,
Then
what's Plan
might
B?
come back here next year.
We don't know. We'll just have to see how it plays out. They were very encouraging to me, but on the other hand, they probably are to everyone. So, and I don't know, you never know how many projects they have and how much money they have, so. But they told me that if we do not get a grant, they will explain to us why and tell us what we need to do, for the next round,
Excellent.
so.
All right. Anybody?
Well, I would like to move that we see if the town will vote to appropriate a sum of money in the amount of $4,157 from the Community Preservation Recreation Funds for the construction of a wheelchair accessible trail at Camp Wanigan, with said funds to be under the control of the Shrewsbury Parks Department?
I think that would be reasonable, yeah.
Yeah?
Parks, you'll be in
Great
control of the funds for that? Okay.
Okay.
I want it all.
Well, we're trying to give you another 4,000. Here you go. To be expended by June 30th, 2026, unless the CPC by majority vote extends the deadline or takes any other action in relation thereto.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Any abstentions? And this motion also passes. We will recommend to town meeting funding for this project. Thank you. Next is Phase 2 of the Historic Gravestone Restoration Project. Would anyone like to speak to that project? Tell us
So-
more about it.
Again, in the last round, we got $5,500 to do an assessment of the historic sections 1 through 9 at Mount View Cemetery. The assessment is completed, and we came up with 532 gravestones that need to be repaired or restored. We had the estimate of $1,000 175,000, that's our estimate. We do have to go out to bid on this project as well. We were asking for $30,000 to go along with that for the inspection part of the project. We would have an independent party come in that's experienced in this type of work to inspect all the work that is done. We did get a grant for $15,000 that will cover some of the veteran stones, and that's specifically for veteran stones. That was the type of grant. So I think, just doing some quick math, I think that may cover a lot of veteran ones, but we still have plenty of other ones that need to be addressed.
Thank you for sharing the assessment and such a thorough application. There is a lot of information in here. So are there questions and comments?
Thank you. Oh,
Dr. Trowett?
Very small type there.
oh, sorry. I
Yes.
think you have mentioned that the preservation would be done, Department of Interior's standards,
Yes,
historic, right?
that's written into the, that'll be written into the contract.
Okay.
Go out to bid, the bid specs.
And same for the consultant, they would follow, they'd be
Yes.
on the same, okay. All right. I'm excited to see this project come back, right, for this stage, because this was definitely clearly a seen need as we campaign on why CPA should be brought to Shrewsbury. Anybody walking through that historic section would just see right away how much needs to be done in that part of the cemetery. And so I'm excited to see this and move forward with it. I like to see it, sure.
What is the timing that you think this could be completed in?
We had, and I went by the recommendation of the assessment company, because they also do this kind of work, and they, of course, weather permitting, a minimum of 2 years. It could go into a third.
I have just a question, not to this application particularly, but is 1 through 9 the only historic sections of the town, or are there other sections that would qualify?
As far as I know, those are the only.
Okay.
Follow up to that?
Mhm.
So there is the South Cemetery, which also has similarly aged interments.
Yeah.
Grove Street? The one on.
Yes.
On Grove.
Right, very small plot, right, but I think it was originally, right, the South Cemetery, right, so.
Right.
Any rationale why that wasn't part of the assessment?
No.
Another application.
No, I mean, we
Yeah.
just,
If they phone a friend, would you like to phone a friend?
If I could comment, Melanie Petrucci from the Historic District Commission. That section is not in the Historic District, so that's why it wasn't included. That would be a separate project from another organization. I don't even know, is it considered Parks property?
it is. Yeah,
Then
it's under our jurisdiction.
it's under theirs, but not ours.
Yeah.
And it was through the Historic District Commission
The
that
applicant.
that initial phase was generated.
Is it historic, Dean, is it a Macris?
Phase 2, phase 2.
I don't think it is.
We'll be back for that
A
one.
lot of people
There you
don't
go.
know about that little,
Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions or comments?
my
Would
motion.
you like to make a
I
motion?
think I have it ready here. I'd like to move to see if the town will vote to appropriate a sum of money in the amount of $205,000 from the Community Preservation Historical Preservation Reserves for the purpose of Mountain View Cemetery Historic Gravestones Phase 2 Preservation and Restoration Project, with said funds to be under the control of the town of Shrewsbury Parks and Cemetery, to be expended by June 30th, 2026, unless the CPC by majority vote extends the deadline or takes any action in relation thereto. Did I fill all the spots?
Yes, there's, you got it. That way we don't have to do it again for the warrant.
Thank you very much.
Is there a second?
Second.
Those in favor of the motion as proposed?
Aye.
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 Those opposed? Any abstentions? This project also will be recommended to town meeting for funding. Thank you for all the work that you did to get it here.
Again, yeah, thank you for such thoroughness. It makes our job so much easier when we have all the facts. I know.
So next, last but certainly not least, we have the 11 Elizabeth Street feasibility study. Would you like to speak to it in a moment?
Well, I'll wait till after 9.
Absolutely.
Poor Paul, he's been sitting there the whole night.
We completely understand. Although, for the record, this is lightning speed for us.
Oh, my God, it's only a little after 8, yeah.
Oh, it's only 8:17?
I know.
Oh, my
Take
gosh.
your time, Paul. We're here all night. No, not really.
Paul Campanello, Chairman of the Shrewsbury Housing Authority. I think my application speaks on its own merits, but to give you the 90-second high level, maybe we wouldn't or couldn't take away from the process. We, I believe you know, we own several hundred units throughout town, but we own a piece of property at Elizabeth Street. Most people that are familiar with the area, right near Coolidge School, right on Jordan Pond. We actually bought Jordan Pond. We already took it on our own accord to develop a land survey to see a feasibility study to see if we might be able to do, we did a conceptual plan to see if we might, the amount of land we had. We have significantly more land than we realized, and now we would like to invoke a conceptual plan to ultimately develop community housing. I know in your packet you saw a blueprint of the original study. If it helps the board, I have a significantly larger layout of the same piece, and I'm happy to walk it down there and show you if that helps. And we're here seeking funding for the feasibility study to move forward on that project. And again, I think our team did a pretty good job preparing it, but I'm happy to take questions.
Any comments?
Does your land actually touch Jordan Pond?
I don't think it actually touches the pond. I think there's a sliver of land right up to it, but we're close but not touching. But in that general Jordan Pond area.
Is the Trails Committee, don't they have a trail around Jordan Pond?
They do, and we're not right there. We're just a little bit removed from that.
Okay, you're okay with it?
I think it may make it, they would, people that were to live there would be able to access the
Sure.
outdoor very easily. I think it would be very beneficial for them.
I think they do now, in the absence of a trail through woods, probably, would be my understanding.
So would it be visible from Jordan Pond?
That's what the feasibility study will determine. All we have done is a land survey. We are not on the pond itself. We actually abut land that then abuts the pond. So there's definitely a buffer. So possibly, but we're talking about building, again, the feasibility study will determine this. We're talking about building family units, not what you think of if you think of like the Shrewsbury Tower or the actual Elizabeth Gardens. If anyone is familiar with the project we did about 5 or 10 years ago on Ridgeland Road, right near Napa Deli, those were all Shrewsbury Housing Authority units. There's also several Shrewsbury Housing Authority units across the street from the new Beale School. They look like a bunch of duplexes. That's the kind of thing we would be proposing. Neighborhood aware development that would be family units ideally, because that's what this town is most in need of, and that fits into your charter for community housing. And this would be, let's be really clear, this would be step one in a very long process. It would be the feasibility study, then it would be funding of these units and partnering with whatever appropriate agencies to do so.
Thank you. Any other questions for call or comments on the proposal?
I like the idea.
I will add maybe one comment. We already paid for the survey out of our operating budget. The survey then leads to the feasibility study, which then leads to a long-term project. So call it a show of good faith, or we didn't want to wait for another committee or thing to see if it really made sense. Now that we know there may be a path, the next step is the path. I'll kind of end my comments there.
I do have a question, if that's all right.
Yes.
What will the feasibility study tell you?
How buildable the land is, what amount of units we can put on. Like, this was like an estimate based on a survey saying, we think we might be able to do something like this. The feasibility study will tell us how far away from the pond would be, where the borders of our land is, how many units we could put, what they might look like, a true feasibility study. Right now, we're saying, oh, it would be cool if we could do something like this. And we think maybe we can do something like this, but we need the study. But great question, because I asked it when it was first brought to me.
And it's been our practice to fund feasibility studies, which seems to be the step that should be taken before the whole thing
Exactly
comes.
right.
So I think this is a logical step.
And in this case, the feasibility study may say, we deem it feasible to build 2 units first, and then 3 units second, then follow on a cul-de-sac. It would tell us all of the things that we don't know. We kind of think we have an idea of, but we don't know to be true. And we would need that feasibility study to then go seek bona fide funding for the work.
Does this abut the school?
No, it's about 1 block off of the school. There's one, I think all the streets have like women's names there, but I think there's 1 or 2 streets over from the school, but it's near the school, it's near that area.
Okay.
If it were family units and they were children, they would certainly be in the walking district of the school, if that's what you
Yeah.
have.
Okay.
Great. Is there a motion that we could, someone would like to make a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Fabulous.
Find my cheat sheet here.
For the amount?
7,000, isn't it? 7,000?
Yes.
Okay. I move to see if the town will vote to appropriate a sum of money in the amount of $7,000 from the Community Preservation Affordable Housing Reserve for the purpose of a feasibility study for building housing on Elizabeth Street, with said funds to be under the control of Housing Authority?
Shrewsbury Housing Authority.
Shrewsbury Housing Authority, to be extended by June 30th, 2026, unless the CPC by majority vote extends the deadline or takes any other action in relation thereto.
Is there a second?
Second.
Those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you. So again, point of order, my first CPA meeting ever, to town meeting next, and it's
Yes.
on there.
It will be an article on, one of the CPC articles on the warrant. That's what we're pushing tonight and saying them this
I know,
way
that's
so
right,
that
that's
they'll
not what I needed.
go to the select board. But then when town meeting has the opportunity to say yes, no, or decrease the amount of funding. But that'll be the next step. So, thank you. We appreciate it. You're
Does
good.
anybody want to see this closer up, the larger one?
It came out great in the packet we've got.
Thank you.
All right, so we've approved those. You've been busy, Kevin. Thank you for all that you're doing to support all of these. So next on our agenda, we have a few discussion items. We already spoke about the anti-aid amendment legal opinion.
Are you waiting for you're not waiting here for that, okay.
I was going
I
to
just
say,
wanted to make sure.
since we
Yeah, right, I
deemed
wanted to make sure you
pergola
didn't think we had to do something.
ineligible, we will not take
Right.
that up for funding. So moving on to number 6, we've already spoken of the anti-aid amendment legal opinion as it related to the First Congregational Church's application. So unless there's anything else anyone wants to say or discuss on that, we'll move on to B, which is the project and budget updates. We don't have, Chris is out, so we don't have a budget to look at right now, correct, Louise?
So there is a budget in your Google Drive that is in a folder outside of the meeting folders,
There it is.
for you to look at.
an updated one?
I think it's, you'd have to be under.
See.
Yeah.
Oh,
Um,
Budget and Finance?
yes,
I know Chris said, but
ongoing CPA budget,
January 16?
and there's, yes,
Okay, I can look at this at home, but I get the drift.
3 tabs at the bottom.
Oh.
Draft budget.
Do you
Keep your
know
finger on the
if
pulse.
this proposed budget includes a state match based on the news that came out? Do you all get the emails from the Community Preservation Coalition?
I do.
Yes.
I do. Okay, do you all get those?
Yeah.
Because there was one sent this weekend that spoke of, the coalition is projecting that the state match will be lower than it was last year, and that we should be budgeting very conservatively for it, at around maybe 20%. So do you know if this reflects that or not?
Not sure if we have that actual number.
Okay.
This might be
Would you say that this projection is conservative? It's actually, this shows a state match proposing that it's slightly higher, and I'm not sure that that's conservative. Because last year we got about 30-something%. So that may need to be adjusted. So I'm not sure until maybe Chris is able to return and revisit the budget. I can't really vote on it when at least I wouldn't want to vote on it knowing that the proposed state match is higher than it should be. Do you have any other thoughts?
Yeah, do we have to vote on it? I mean, is it
That's one of
something
the
we have to approve?
articles that will be on the warrant, the town meeting will be asked to approve our annual budget.
Oh, well, can we look at it again next month?
I think we're gonna have to.
It's-
I mean,
We-
this
we
doesn't
don't-
reflect it.
But,
This doesn't reflect the projects that were.
no, it
discussing,
doesn't
so-
reflect the projects that we have just proposed funding, and it doesn't reflect the latest information about the state match. So we'll need to revisit that next month. And
So,
that,
I'm sorry, I hate budgets. Are we supposed to be looking at the FY '24 budget or the FY '25 proposed?
FY '24 proposed.
25 proposed.
25 proposed, and there is nothing in that column.
So we don't have that on here. So yes, so we can't do anything with this until we have the next column. What did I think? Because my clients are on FY '24. It's the year the fiscal year will end in, and that will, the fiscal year we'll be discussing at town meeting will go from July 1, 2024 to June 30th, 2025.
And will be called fiscal year '25.
Yes.
Okay.
So we are missing a whole column here. So yes, we will revisit this.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then, yes,
I think, though, may have to take executive action yourself to create a draft.
probably.
To be included with the warrant articles, and then pending approval by the CPC formally at the next meeting, but with the draft already get provided. I think you have to just do that.
I think you're right. I'll work with Louise and Chris on that, and we'll have it next month for you folks to look at. So then, did folks have a chance to look at, we looked at it briefly at our last meeting, they drafted the annual report submission. There have been,
Could we go back to, for a
Yes.
moment to the project and budget update? I had a question about the expenditure from last cycle for the pergola, the $85,500, and how much of that, if all of that was spent, and if all the things on the list that were supposed to be done were provided. I know that project is kind of dead in the water, but just as as a
There
housekeeping.
is, no, there is a
I
draft
seem
on
to
here.
recall seeing there was something like 55,000 that was spent or something.
There are, and if you're looking at this, there are 3 tabs. There is a draft for fiscal year 2025, which I apologize, I did not see right away. It, of course, is incomplete, but it does,
It's in the budget document?
yeah. But it, well, I will have to ask, I unfortunately cannot really answer many questions without Chris on this. Because I'm not certain if it's supposed to show what has been expended or what was, you know, this shows what was allocated, but you're correct, in some cases, they did not expend the full amount.
Okay, well,
We did.
because,
We spent 57,000
okay,
out of the 85, and it got us up to this point. The rest of it would have been for meetings, the actual bid documents,
right,
all the way up to bid documents and construction meetings.
okay. Well, that's what I was wondering, because it seemed like some of the things overlapped the 2 projects, and I didn't know whether it had already been spent out of that 85, and then we're just gonna pay for it again, you know, in the
Right.
other one. So I asked this question before about what happens to when it's closed out, whatever was not spent goes back into that reserve, correct? Okay.
Correct.
And we keep those projects there. If, like, for example, Dean Park hasn't begun yet, so we still have that money is allocated. So let me catch up with Mr. McGoldrick, and as soon as I have more information or a draft, I will share that with all of you.
Yeah, thank you.
Is there a way to see how much is in each category for like the public or town employees?
Pardon me?
Is
Is
there-
there a way
Each
to like
reserve,
see
how
how much is in each category, either for the public or the town employees?
There should be. There should be.
Once that-
included in the annual report every year, right? Like
Right.
the projected budget, what was spent, and the percentage, what's allocated. So that would be one way.
And
But it changes.
Well, I guess, that's what we had been asking for, what's the total in the whole fund? And it depends on who you ask, so
It's
we
the-
don't have a solid number. I thought Chris's last update was 1.9 million, does that sound, from the last meeting, the last CPC meeting?
But that's in total, right?
Yes,
You're not looking for each category.
right.
And that would be nice too.
The category gives us a starting place,
Right.
but we know the general fund part of it is
Yeah.
larger.
Right, 10% for each category, 5% for admin,
Right.
65% for each category to nibble on, right?
kind of see if I can find.
Actually, so to that point, I think that once you have more clarity with Chris about the available balances,
Right.
that you may need to swap the fund in which you're pulling these monies from.
Right, they may need to be out of the general reserve, not the
Right,
specific ones.
Right, but there is a guidance from the coalition that says, grab from your budgeted reserve from that category first before going into the general pot. But you can take, start with the 10% that you have to put anyway towards that category as your starting basis. Then, if that's exceeded, you can go and tap into your general, into the budgeted reserve amount. And then after that, go into your undesignated.
I can't with great confidence give you any exact numbers right now,
Oh, that's
but let me find out and
You're missing
speak
a
to
whole
Chris.
column.
Looks, I'm, just what's in here for the fiscal year '25 draft, it shows a total balance of 1.5 million. But
In the-
I'm not sure,
Are you just looking for your piece of the pie, Kevin? Is that the deal?
I think that reflects what
Wait
was
till you see the
allocated,
next
but not what was spent. So,
Because when I get into playgrounds,
let us get back to you.
You better sharpen your pencil on that one.
We'll check that and get back to you.
Wouldn't there be a grand bargain with the, let's say, give you 10 playgrounds for $1 million? No?
it's
Right,
honestly,
so- Also on our agenda was the draft of the annual report submission. I know that the spelling of our names was, actually, wait.
It was
I
the-
saw one that had the spelling of our names correct, but this one I just opened, it's not again. But if folks had a chance to look through that. Yes, actually, I thought I looked at it and my name was corrected, but yeah, we need to
It
fix
is,
that.
no, it's corrected. I
Wait a
just
minute, can you
Then
confirmed.
scroll up
there
just a
must be
second?
more than one copy of it in here somewhere.
Oh, yeah,
If we could have
Okay.
things in one spot, that would be swell. But if you look at especially the section that pertains to the board that you represent, if there are edits or clarity, please forward that information to Louise as soon as you can.
There are two documents. One is the annual report, and one starts with the title Community Preservation Committee, and your name is spelled differently in each one.
Yes.
Yeah.
I've corrected it in one. So I think,
Confirm in the actual document, it is updated.
In both documents?
So those are just copies of the annual report. So
Okay.
those are somewhere else in another Google Drive that I updated, and made the copy and brought it there.
I'm a
too many-
twin, so anytime I can get my name right, I'm really excited.
I hope you don't have the same names, too.
No, and our parents were very kind and did not name us anything rhyming or too close, but just generally being called the wrong name for half a century.
Well, I'd like to say that in general, I thought it was a very thorough report. It went into a lot of detail, and in fact, I was questioning whether all that was necessary. And then I looked at last year's annual report, 2022, and I discovered it was 462 pages. And I guess verbosity is not unusual, so we seem to be increasing along those lines as we increase population in the town. If you're an old timer like me and remember the old paper town report, it's like maybe this thick, and you could keep it at your bedside and, leaf through a few things. This is totally a different world. I think this is thorough, and so I didn't see anything terrible in it. Covers everything, it seems. I couldn't think of anything outstanding that I missed. It seemed to really cover the whole process, the whole history, everything. So,
Louise, is there a drop-dead deadline by which if anyone were to find a comma, a misspelling, or something they want to clarify, that they need to let the planning department know?
I would say no later than Thursday.
Tomorrow,
Yeah.
yes.
Perfect. Deadlines are good. All right. And also, moving on to next steps, this is the time of year when all of you representing other boards should be thinking about getting feedback and asking your boards for input on your section of the community preservation plan. If there's an update on goals, if you'd like a CPA update to your board, let me know. But otherwise, be thinking about what should be in those pages. We, in the past, have had a public input meeting in April, and I think it would be, I think calling it a workshop and helping folks talk through their projects was a good format. We should be scheduling that. We could do it as part of our April meeting. That's what we did when we did it in September, I think it was. Did you folks like that format?
It was nice.
The one we did at the senior center?
Yes.
Yeah, that worked, seemed to work.
We could conceivably do the workshop as part of that April meeting. Our agenda should, these things are, we've already talked about the wording for the warrant, so these are all complete. Do you think that would fit on our agenda for April? If we make April the public workshop? Or is it too soon, since we just did it in September?
Because it really should be focusing on the communication plan, hearing resources, needs, and opportunities, as opposed to diving into, hey, what do you have for a project idea?
Good point.
So it really needs to be built, I mean, if you have two things on agenda, that's the community's prerogative, but I think that needs to be specifically called out, what are resources, needs, and opportunities, and bill it as a community preservation plan update.
More like the first one that we did in the very beginning at the library. Not that to that extreme, but that
Yes.
information, okay.
Yep. So
Yeah.
it's going through what is CPA 101,
Yeah.
and then saying, you know, does anybody in the audience want to talk about like opportunities or any other method in which we gather information like we did last time?
Do that. Is April the right time for that? What do you all think?
Did any of the participants in our workshop in the fall, did they actually go through the process and present us with a project?
No. And there were some really good ideas as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah. Yeah, and I don't know what happened, right? Where was the fall off? Because there seemed to be excitement after that meeting. You know,
Yeah, I
whether
was told
whether
through
they
the
expected
grapevine.
us to run with it, or what, yeah.
I think there was one project someone was speaking of with enthusiasm, but when they went from the idea stage and started looking into what it would really take for them to execute and complete their idea, it was a bigger project than they felt they could take on.
Right.
But it was exciting to hear the idea out. So why don't I do this? I will talk with Chris and Louise about what needs to be on our agenda, and we will communicate with all of you. I think at a minimum, we could take a part of the meeting as a public hearing if people would like to identify resources, needs, and opportunities. And then maybe the workshop is later. Because it might muddy the waters if people are working on a project before we've actually at town meeting voted on the existing approved projects. So it might make sense to wait until after that's happened.
Okay, so you're saying we should have the May meeting be the open meeting?
Or do we want to try to do both of those on one agenda? So they are two different types of meetings, and I don't think we need to have, I don't think the public would join us if we were to have two back-to-back come talk to us meetings. You know, we're still
No,
very
no.
new at this, so we're figuring out the right rhythm of what time of year do we ask for your input, or what time of the year do you come with us with an idea. Do we try to do both of them in the first half of the year, or do we move another to later in the year?
I think my opinion is keep the community preservation plan update in April every year, because that rolls into you also hearing from the committee heads, and any other outreach that we do, let's say asking the select board conversations, or the library trustees, or any other groups that we want to talk with. That then comes back to May with a draft, and June with an approval of the plan, so that ideally, June meeting is when you sign off saying, yes, we approve, and that's in your version, publish it, and we
Third of
begin.
July, we start all over.
Yep.
Hope to see all the same faces around the table, but we might not. So why don't we do that? April, we will ask for public input on resources, needs, and opportunities. and we'll leave it at that and keep thinking about a workshop time, when that could be done, yes.
Yeah, one more thing on there. That one is the one true public hearing, like notification in the paper, kind of
Is there time to do
Paper.
that before April?
paper, public notification, like paper, newspaper notification.
Or maybe we do it in May when people are thinking about, they're thinking, that gives April to talk to your boards. May, we hear from the community. At this point, we shouldn't be rewriting the whole plan. It should just be updating a little bit. So hopefully it wouldn't be the long, painful process we've put each other through already.
Yeah, we might have just missed the legal notice timing to be able to submit that adequately for April, what is it? April 1st, right? Is your next meeting?
April 1st.
I think you need 2 weeks for a public hearing.
Right. I'm just confirming your, yeah, that's on the calendar is CPC.
What do we have on the
for April
calendar?
1st. So, I think we just missed noticing.
You said 2 weeks out. So we have 4 weeks to the meeting.
But,
April meeting is what date?
I mean, good question,
Oh,
because
okay.
it's
I
not
don't
on
have
my
it. It's not
calendar.
on mine either, that's why I'm
Okay.
asking, did I not put it on, or did I not?
I didn't either.
Or like the the 15th and the 22nd, it would need to be noticed, so. I don't wanna say yes right now and have them tell me tomorrow it can't be put in the community advocate.
Actually,
I have it. You have it? Yeah.
so when is our April meeting scheduled, Louise?
Monday the 1st.
April
April Fool's Day, huh?
Ah,
Well, I didn't have it in there.
Oh,
For some reason,
Is there
I
a
don't
conflict?
have that on my calendar.
I think I have it in mine.
Yeah, haha, maybe yours is wrong, playing a trick on you.
It's odd, I didn't have it there.
There it is.
I keep thinking that we're not even in March yet.
So we do have time to advertise that for public input?
I don't know the community advocate, I don't have it off the top of my head right now, so I don't wanna say yes.
What if we do we're meeting May 8th is our May meeting, or May 6th, I'm sorry. And that's 2 weeks before town meeting. Maybe that, we will have a little less on our agenda, in theory then. We won't have anything for town meeting on our agenda, and I wonder if just being May, if people will be thinking about community and town more than they might be in April. Yeah, we could do either.
If we do May, then that means draft in June and approval in July.
Could be done. What do you all think?
It would be approval with the
With the
new
new-
members, like we were trying to avoid prior, right?
True. All right, let's do it April 1st.
Let's see
We
if we
can't,
can.
it's, yeah, we're not sure whether it can be publicized.
If we can.
Yeah.
Well, we won't
Or-
we don't have that answer tonight. So let's, Louise, you and I talk tomorrow as soon as we can find out.
Or
And
if
we'll
we
let-
have to move
we'll
the
let
date
you
of the
know.
meeting, we could,
And our meetings are set April 1st and May 6th. And we will just communicate much earlier as soon as we find out what's possible for the agenda. Because there is an awful lot of, we will want to use social media and in town newsletters as well. So I think even though we would be hurrying up to get the plan done, I'd rather have more time to get people here. So I'm leaning towards May 6th, but let's find out what's possible. And then the other thing I wanted to share with all of you, if you did see, especially for newer folks, I was thinking if you, Carl, had questions, or anybody that wants a refresher, in May, there will be a CPA boot camp webinar. If anyone wanted to attend that, there's information on the coalition's latest newsletter and probably on their website. It did not have the date, so I assume on the website you'll be able to find information about signing up for that. Is there anything else that folks wanted to think about or talk about tonight? Yes, Carl?
I was just wondering, do you think we're done with the projects for this town meeting? Or could,
I think we have to be, because the select board will be reviewing a draft of the warrant on March 12th.
March 12th?
So-
Okay, even though the meeting's in May?
Yeah,
Okay. So
because they'll go through the draft of the warrant, and then there will be a finance committee hearing. There'll be all the steps that go from when we hand it off until May 20th. So I believe that there is, it's my opinion that there's no time left to consider any other funding between now and the May town meeting. But absolutely, folks
Unlike-
should get their
unlike-
ducks in the order for October.
unlike the fire engine, right? So,
We are officially out of time now.
okay, okay,
But October will be here before we know it.
all right.
I would like to bring up one other topic.
Yes.
We had talked about meeting with the Affordable Housing Trust and reconciling our arrangements for how we can have funds that work together. I had come up with a project that, or plan that reflects what they do in Northborough, where they have an affordable housing reserve account, which both groups, contribute to. And they have a way of doing this so that this pre-approved by town meeting. When projects come up, they are then reviewed by their CPC, and then the select board actually gets to look at the invoices that they come in and pays the bills at the end. So everybody gets a chance to look at it, and it doesn't hold up you don't have to have a town meeting to approve a project because the money is pre-approved in that reserve account. Now, I've been trying to get a copy of their their document as to how they work that out, and they have not been able to find it.
There.
This is lost in the mists of time. They've had CPC for quite a few years, more than we have. And, staff changes. I don't know where this document is, but nobody has turned it up. But there should be some way to access this somewhere, or something similar, because I think it would be the ideal situation, is what we want. We want to be able to approve projects. We want to look at them. We just aren't going to handle money over willy-nilly. And everybody wins on this. They get money from us, we get projects, we get, things happen. Could work out very smoothly. Does anybody have anything to add to this, or say to this, or, am I crazy?
Definitely not crazy. I know at one point we had asked for, I believe the Affordable Housing Trust has created a plan.
Yeah.
And I don't know, Louise, do you have any idea if we've ever received it?
But this also isn't on the agenda, but, so I don't know how that works with you all, but, they do have their action plan, it's been finalized, so.
I looked at it. It's only 13 pages. It's not very detailed.
They can come in before you and, discuss, but they did put a lot of work into it.
Yeah, I did have a conversation with the head of the Affordable Housing Trust, with Chris. And he didn't have a specific request at that time of how they thought something like that could work. So certainly, if there is an interest in doing that, I think both parties need to come up with a framework for it. And my opinion was that we certainly weren't going, my opinion was that I'm not comfortable with just allocating money, and here it is.
Right.
Let us know how you do with it. And so they were going to try to look for some verbiage as well, or suggestions of how that might work. And we did talk about having a joint meeting, but it took an awful lot to get that conversation, which was done, I think, in a car. So I don't know, it was tough to try to get that conversation.
Well, I will
So
continue to pursue my document.
Yeah, pursue your
Maybe
document.
there's another town that has one that they actually have in a file.
And it's certainly something to talk more about. I know that there are a lot of different opinions of how that could work, or what not to do, as well as what possibly to do.
It seemed to fit all our requirements, because we'd still get to review projects, you know, they'd have the money if they needed to make a fast move.
It was pointed out to me that they do have some funds, so while we're figuring this out, we shouldn't feel panicked or guilty that we're holding them up.
Right,
They-
right, right.
They do have $1 million,
Yes, I know,
so that's a start.
yes, yes. So, all right.
What else? Anything else?
Well, at
gonna
this
say-
time, yeah. So, at one point, for a long time, we had an agenda item that talked about having, basically the bat phone for the consultancy. Is that, I don't see that on the agenda anymore. Does that mean that's, ideas dropped? Or is it
I
still?
think that's a Chris question.
Okay. Certainly, I still feel that that's an important safety net for CPC, to be able to have a consultancy that we can tap into.
I'll add that to my Chris list. So, yeah, Chris should be back shortly, and we have Louise, and we also have a new assistant town planner, so hopefully those things we'll see fewer instances of them getting dropped off the agenda and more answers shortly.
Includes the signage too, right?
Pardon?
Project signage?
I asked for that to be taken off this one, because right now there's nothing to put a sign next to. And we've got a lot of examples, we ultimately just need to make a decision. So, but we tonight decided the important things. The signage is important, but we've also got the big things done, eligibility and project funding. So we can put signage back on for next week.
There is one project,
What's that?
Camp Wanigan.
If there's dirt, we can get a sign.
I think there's
It's
$300 in
March.
the budget for a sign in there.
In theory, I should be enjoying snowbanks and skiing.
Story walk, yeah, another one.
You know, a
Two
lot of
signs.
people like to snowshoe in Camp Winigan.
Well, if we had snow,
Well, there's mud shoe, you know.
that's not as much fun.
You
All
have
right,
to
we'll put
try
the
it.
signage on next month's agenda, and I will see if Chris, if we can't narrow down some of the many, many options. I think it is a topic we can over-discuss, that perhaps if there's just a couple of options and we pick them and get it done. All right. Anything else? I'm not looking at Jason. Anyone?
Or this way, come on.
There being no other items, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
9 on the dot,
Ayes,
perfect.
carried. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you all very much.